Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It was funny because when we launched this a few minutes ago, Susan and I are like, gosh, it's been a minute since we've done a webinar. We got used to the in-person after a couple of years. So I'm transitioning back to a Zoom. So throughout the past couple years, and even more recently, as a result of the pandemic, we've had a lot of clients and organizations, even not necessarily clients, come to Susan and I and say, hey, because we have so many employees that are working remotely, we're wondering what other companies are doing with their PTO policies. Are they loosening up some of them? So allowing employees to maybe take unlimited time and not have a set schedule for days off for employees. And Susan and I did some research. We went to the SHRM website. We went to a couple other areas and had a really hard time finding current data. SHRM had a survey result from a couple of years ago. World at Work, which is another source that we researched, theirs was a couple of years old. So we just didn't have any really good current data to share with you. So that was the reason that we did this survey. The survey went out, gosh, it was maybe the end of first quarter. And we had huge response rate. We had about 175 responses. And so we took all of the data and we put it in a pretty easy format for all of you. And that's what we're going to present today. At the end of the presentation, we will send out the slide deck. It'll either come at the end of today or at some point tomorrow. So that slide deck you can share with others in your organization. Susan mentioned the chat feature, so feel free to insert any questions there and we will monitor it throughout the presentation. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so the first question we asked was, how many employees do you have? And we had about 50% of the respondents who come from organizations between 11 to 50 employees and 100 to 249 employees. So that made up about 50% of the responses. The next question was inquiring about the industry that the respondents came from. Again, most are coming from manufacturing and construction, and that's pretty common when we do these surveys. We have about a third at least that are within the manufacturing construction industries. And you'll notice we have a category for other. And we did a little bit of deep dive in that category and found out that the industries there that are represented are property management. We had a gardening center, educational services, and carpentry. The next question, have you changed any of your leave policies due to the new work environment? So again, this survey went out towards the end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter. So things have maybe changed since then due to staffing and other challenges that organizations are having. But when this question was answered, have you changed any of your leave policies due to the new work environment? At that time, we had 74% say no and 26% that indicated yes. And we were a little bit surprised by this. But we also think we'll see a shift with more companies changing their leave policies moving forward. Do you plan to revise your leave policies this year? We have the majority, 66%, who say no. 19% are thinking about it, and we have 15% that said yes. And you know, what I think is that due to the challenges in the staffing, organizations really struggling to get the employees that they need, one of the things that organizations prioritized was their compensation. a lot of companies have adjusted their compensation philosophy, their compensation ranges, in order to be more competitive and to get those employees in. So now that they have done that, I would predict that they're going to start looking back at policies like leave policies and maybe making more changes to those to be competitive, to make sure that they're getting the employees that they need and retaining the employees they need.
The other thing we're seeing too is people reevaluating their benefit plans. You know, what can they do? We had a lot of people, not a lot, but there was certainly, I would say probably 10 to 20% of our employer groups changed their new hire waiting period to get people on the benefits sooner. They're looking at different ideas with their benefit packages because we have so many different generations in the workforce. So and we all know we're speaking to the choir here. I look at everybody who's on, and you guys deal with this every single day. And I'm sure you're getting questions like, what can we do differently to attract and retain employees?
Good point. And kind of on that generational note, we've had some good discussions, not only internally in our department, but in the in-person survey or the in-person seminars that we had for this. We talked about the different generations and what they're looking for. And I read a benefit report, a recent benefit report that was published by Hartford. And I want to share some of the statistics with you because I just find it so intriguing. So baby boomers are more likely than any other generation to switch jobs for higher wages. Our Gen Xers and older millennials are more likely to switch for career advancement opportunities. And that's 32% for Gen Xers and 34% for the older millennials. And then our Gen Zs and younger millennials are more likely to switch for workplace flexibility. So as you can see, we have a total mix of what drives and what things are important to the different generations. And I think that's super important when we are looking at benefits, when we are looking at our leave policies, when we're looking at compensation. So I thought that was really interesting to share. Okay, our next question. Have you considered an unlimited PTO policy or something similar? As you can see, wide majority, 93% said no, with 7% saying yes. And this surprised us too. I know of 2 clients, specifically Nolte clients, who did transition to an unlimited PTO policy. So
I was just at a conference in Nashville last week, and there were a couple organizations there as well that they just went to unlimited. They don't want to worry about it. And they were more in, I would say, the marketing industry, certainly was not manufacturing, was not construction, but these industries, in the old days, we called them the white collar industries. And so they just have so many people working remote that they just think it's easier. They don't want people to have to track their vacation hours or however they track it or used to track it. And they're just allowing them to get their jobs done whenever they want to get their jobs done. And so I think it's a very interesting concept that might be becoming more popular.
Mm-hmm. What paid holidays do you adopt? So the majority are paying for those holidays that are the major holidays that we know. So July 4th, New Year's, Christmas, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving Day. And we only had 5 employers who pay for Election Day, which we thought it would be more than that. And then we also have in the middle here an other category. And we kind of were talking and we thought it was funny and we had ideas of what that other category might be. One, I think it's probably birthdays. So a lot of companies will give you the day off if it's your birthday. But the funny one for us was the Monday after the Super Bowl. We think that should be a national holiday.
Nobody gets anything done anyway. This is what we all decided. Everybody talks about the game for at least the first half hour of the day, or they're hungover or whatever it might be. So we think that should become a national holiday, or we decided the game needs to be moved to Saturday night. That would make all of our lives so much easier. But so I'm trying to think if anything else came up. I'm not sure if there, I think it was mostly birthdays. And yeah, birthdays were the biggest other category. And if you guys have any ideas or thoughts, put it in the chat and we can share it with everybody on something that you guys might do different that we can share.
Do you offer paid leave programs, and for how long? So 1 to 5 days is the majority allowance for any paid reason, with the exception of holidays, of course, and that allows 6 to 10 days as a majority. And then we had 33 respondents indicate that they don't allow paid leave for jury duty. And that happens to be the majority for that category. And we thought that that was a little unusual. We expected there to be more that would pay the difference, at least, for jury duty leave.
Natalie, thank you. Natalie put a floating holiday, and you're right. That was one that was included in the other category too. Somebody had said that. So just giving people the option on what day off that they want. So thanks, Natalie.
Do you currently offer a traditional PTO program or a banked program? And just a reminder, a traditional program is going to be where you have a bucket for vacation time, a bucket for sick time, a bucket for personal time. That's something that we were familiar with a long time ago. And there are certainly organizations that still have that. The banked program is where you just have one bucket and you just give a set number of hours to the employee and they can manage it. A lot of companies with the bank program don't track the reasons why they're taking that paid time. So administratively tends to be a little bit easier than a traditional program. So we had 59% of the respondents indicate that they have a bank type program, and then 41% traditional. So I'm going to talk about the traditional, and then when I'm done, I'll transition it to Susan, and she's going to talk about the bank type. Okay, how many vacation days do you provide based on the following years of service? So I know there's a lot to look at here, but I'm going to try to summarize it for you. The days allowance increase for each year of service category. And really it holds for the majority of 15 to 21 days for the 7 to 20 years of service. And then less than 1, 0 days. So 1 to 2 years, majority is 1 to 5 days, 3 to 4 years. The majority is 6 to 10 days. 5 to 6 years of service, the majority is 11 to 14 days. And then the 7 to 20 plus years of service, the majority is 15 to 21. Okay, the next question, how many personal days do you provide based on the following years of service? The majority is a very strong 0 days. And then we had about 25% of respondents reported 1 to 5 days. How many sick days do you provide based on the following years of service? And you'll see 1 to 5 days is the majority for all the years of service. And 0 days is the second majority. And we suspect that the 0 days are going to be those companies that have fewer than 50 employees. Because as you know, back in 2019, when Michigan implemented the Paid Medical Leave Act, PMLA, that required organizations to provide sick time if you're over 50 employees. So if that applies to you and you're not sure what that is, let Susan and I know. It's been a couple of years, but we still remember.
The panic. We remember the panic.
Yes, we do.
There's a lot of panic happening at that time. And a lot of people made some changes to a PTO policy.
Okay, how do you allocate time? In the vacation bucket, we have 58% that indicated they just give it all at one time annually, with 42% say that it's accrued. For personal time, the majority just give it all up front, one time annually. And then sick time, the same, majority provide one time. When are employees eligible to use vacation time? So we've got 20 respondents that indicated after 1 year. And we think that's probably a lot of the manufacturing and construction industries. We have 15 that reported date of hire, 15 after 90 days. And then we have a category here after a specific number of days. And those are companies that didn't have anything that fell into the categories that we listed. So in the table below, you'll see those specific number of days that they have available. When are the employees eligible to use personal days? Again, the majority is date of hire. That was 14 respondents. We had roughly 5 respondents after 90 days and then 4 respondents after 1 year. When are employees eligible to use sick days? 20 respondents after a year, and then equally data hire and after 90 days, each we had 15 respondents. And then again, after a specific number of days, you'll see those indicated at the bottom. Do you allow employees to carry over unused hours? So in the vacation bucket, we had 61% who indicated no. For the personal time bucket, we had 90% that indicated no, and then also sick time bucket, majority or 71% no. What is the maximum number of unused hours an employee can carry over? So in the vacation bucket, you'll see we have a variety here. It's as few as 5 days to no limit, and then everything in between. Personal, we have a little bit more consistency. It looks like the majority are 40 hours. And then also sick time, you'll see that varies significantly. We have as few as 1 day, and it goes up to unlimited also. Do you allow employees to redirect unused days for causes important to them? So what this means is that causes important to them, it's kind of like you are giving days that you have available in your bucket to somebody who needs it. It could be an employee that's going through a difficult time and had burned through their PTO and they don't have anything left. So you're basically gifting time off for them. And most organizations have some form of a policy, some parameters in place just to make sure that it doesn't get abused. Other causes could be for, volunteering out in the community, which is something that Nolte does. And a lot of organizations are adopting time for employees to go out and volunteer at organizations that or nonprofits that are important to them.
Sorry, Carrie.
Go ahead.
One thing that we just want to remind people is if you have some type of a gifting program, like we do here at Nolte, we do have a gifting program. We did have to put parameters in place for it. And it has to be management approval. So it can't just be, I have 3 weeks left and I love Carrie, so I want to give her my 3 weeks. Carrie, you know, I would do that if I could. So if you definitely want to put some parameters on it, because people are very generous and sometimes they don't know the whole story, right? What the story might be, why people did burn through. And so they can request it. And it might be for a honeymoon that's coming up, or the birth of a child, or adoption of a child, or, they have to have surgery and it was unexpected. And so we certainly have parameters, that guardrails, we call them, to put in place. And then we have the employees, if they want to gift, they can decide whether they want it to be anonymous or not. That is how we work it at Nolte. I will tell you though, the IRS wants us to put them all in a big bucket. So everybody, whoever wants to donate their time goes actually into a big bucket, and then you pull off of that big bucket. The IRS likes that system a lot better than me just giving time to Carrie. So if you are going to put into some type of gifting program, which I think is awesome, just make sure that you look at the IRS regs when it comes to the taxation part of it. I know, like, Rebecca Green's on here, CFO. She probably knows some of those, but you just want to watch out for that.
Okay, so in the vacation bucket, we have 87% that indicated they don't allow employees to redirect for causes important to them, personal time. 97% don't allow that either, and then majority and sick time don't allow that. So for those that answered, the few that answered yes, we do allow employees to redirect, we had a follow-up question. Which areas can employees redirect their unused vacation days? And the majority are other employees in need. So that goes back to what Susan was talking about, the gifting. We had 5 who indicated other, and we're not sure what that is. We didn't get the detail on that. And we had 1 that indicated 401k funds.
And we all learned something about the 401k funds. You have to make sure that your, this came out of the meetings that we had here a couple weeks ago. If you allow employees to direct into their 401k, your summary plan description needs to be updated. So work with your 401k provider. They will let you know the proper wording that you need in your SBD. One of the participants, they went through an audit, and that is how they found out that their language was not up to date. So they just had to add the language in their 401k plan. So that was good for all of us to learn.
Good point. Which areas can employees redirect for unused personal days? We only had 1 respondent, and that was providing to other employees in need. And the rest were no answer for the other categories. Which areas can employees redirect for unused sick days? Majority, again, other employees in need. And we had a couple for 401k, and then we had 1 respondent for other. Do you require employees to take a minimum of vacation time each year? We actually had quite a bit of discussion on this. Majority said no, but yet it's funny because when I write handbooks for clients, we always have a lot of discussion on PTO, and I'm doing better. I don't usually take a ton of vacation, but I recommend it. Like when I'm consulting with a client, I highly recommend that they require employees to take at least a week. And a lot of other organizations at the seminars were chiming in also and saying that many of them also require it.
They highly encourage it. You know, that was the people that were there. They're like, we really highly encourage people to take a mental health break from work, take an entire 5 days off. And so as we all know, it is important.
Are part-time employees eligible for paid time off? We had 65% for the vacation bucket. They said no. Personal time, also 76 said no, and 53% said no for the sick time bucket. How are vacation hours allocated for part-time employees? In the vacation bucket, 43% prorate based on scheduled hours and 50% prorate based on hours worked. For personal time, the majority prorate based on scheduled hours. And then sick time, we kind of have a mix. The majority, 50% prorate based on worked hours, 33% prorate based on scheduled hours.
Okay.
All right, Susan, you're up.
I am up. So as Carrie mentioned, the bank type is when we get rid of the traditional vacation bucket, personal bucket, and then sick bucket. Now we just have one big bucket and everything can pull out of this one bucket. I can tell you at Nolte, when I came here 22 years ago, which is so hard to believe that it's been 22 years, we switched to a PTO bank. And the reason why we did this is my first month here or something like that, I had people scheduling sick days. And I was like, you can't schedule a sick day. You don't know when you're going to be sick. And so I just was like dumbfounded that people did that. So we immediately switched to the PTO bank, and it just makes life a lot easier. We allow people to take it off for whatever they need it for, and I don't need to track. We highly encourage people to, when they put in their PTO request in the little note section or comment section, why they're taking it off, because people forget. They're like, well, do you remember why I took time off way back in January? I'm like, I have no idea why you took time off. So we encourage you, if you have a system like that, is maybe have a comment section, but it does make life a little bit easier. All right, let's get into it. So how many PTO days do you provide based on the following years of service? So this is very similar when you go back, and we will send this to you. Very similar if you lumped all the vacation and the personal time and the sick time together that Carrie talked about with the years of service here. So all the way 20 years. I mean, we have some very generous employers that they do 30 plus days, 35.5% are offering that 30 plus days if you've been there for 20 years. So we will let you analyze this and look at your organization. We'll send this to you at the end. Next slide. How do you allocate PTO throughout the year? 54% of you said by accrual. 46% was annual. At Nolte, we just give it to, they get their full bank right at their hire date. So everybody knows when it's coming and how to utilize it. So, but 54% is accrual. And I have a feeling that that's probably because we have a lot of manufacturing. I'm sure turnover would affect this decision for sure. When are the employees eligible to use PTO? So the majority was after 90 days. And then we have about 27 that said data hire. Then after 1 year, which just, I think, is very difficult. But again, maybe it's more the manufacturing and, but you have to be careful with the after 1 year because of the paid Michigan leave. So anybody who has that, you want to be careful with that. Beginning of next month, after a specific number of days, and you can see the specific number of days was either one person answered 60 or once it is accrued. So those were the majority of the answers right there. Do you allow employees to carry over unused PTO? And here we have a majority that said 71% said yes, that they do allow people to carry over their PTO. 29% were no. And next slide. So here's the maximum number of unused PTO an employee can carry over. And we were just kind of dumbfounded by all of these answers, how much it varies. It was, I mean, you can see we had 28 responses of how much it varies. And You know, we have 400 hours, 50% of the bank. Number 20, we were just like, we looked at this and there's no way I could work in this HR department or payroll. 1.7 to 3 times annual accrual. And that just gives me a headache even trying to think about that. I hope they have some system that magically figures that out for them, because that just seems super confusing to me. I just like the simpler the better when it comes to this kind of stuff, but wide variety of how people allow the carryover. We allow people to get paid up to 5 days of unused time because we really want to push people to take their PTO. We think it's important. And so we only pay out up to 40 hours. Do you allow employees to redirect unused PTO for causes important to them? Very similar to what Carrie was talking about. Again, 87% said no. We only had 13% say yes on this slide. And very similar answers here. Other employees in need, the 401k, a few more do the 401k, nonprofits, other student loans. Speaking of student loans, that has become a topic of conversation with our clients and prospects about how can you help people pay off their student loans. And so we have had a few inquiries about that. So if this is a program that you are thinking of implementing or want some more information on it, let us know. We have, I think, like 4 or 5 vendors. Some people just do it internally. And, but let us know if you would like to learn more information about the student loan payoff. There are some federal programs out there, but after talking to a few of our clients, if they qualify, it is like jumping through 1,000 hoops from my understanding. It was very difficult for one person to even attempt to apply for getting some loan forgiveness. So maybe you guys have dealt with this with your organization as well. Next slide. Do you require employees to take a minimum amount of PTO? So again, very similar to the traditional. And only 16% of you said yes. So we would love for that number to get a little bit higher. I think it's important for people to not have the pressure, you know, of having to work all the time. And especially in our emotional and mental health well-being crisis that we are in now, I think this is very important for people to look at these policies. Are all part-time employees eligible for PTO? 55% of you said yes, 45% said no. How are PTO hours allocated for part-time employees? So we had only 6% say same as full-time. The majority was prorated based on hours worked or prorated based on scheduled hours. And we just implemented this a couple of years ago at Nolte. Because we had some people that were working less hours because of the needs of their family. And we just only thought it was fair that we implement some type of a part-time PTO for them as well. It's important to retain these employees, and it was actually very easy for us to do and very well received. Parental leave. This is one of the main drivers of why we did this survey. Carrie and I got a lot of questions on this at the beginning of the year about what are people doing with parental leave? You know, is it something that we should consider? So here's the respondents that we had. Do you currently offer paid parental leave in addition to or separate from FML? So I think that's really important that people understand this question, because anybody who's over 50 employees has to have FML. So that's a given. But what we wanted to know is, are you offering something separate? And this was the question that we were getting from a few of our employer groups is, you know, what are people doing? We're having people come in and ask us. We have adoptive parents come in. We're having dads come in and ask. So we're like, okay, we thought about doing a paid leave survey. Let's ask it. So only 17% of the respondents currently have a paid parental leave in addition to. Obviously, 83% were at no. So how many paid parental leave days do you offer? So those that responded yes, here's what they're offering. 10 weeks full-time, 2 weeks part-time. You can see some of the other answers. For the mother, 12 weeks of paid maternity leave. PTO must be used up before this starts. They have a separate program. I'm assuming 5 days. I don't know, maybe it was 5 weeks, 2 weeks, up to 30, 12 weeks. So there is a lot of varying opinions here on how much time. Number 18, they just give 3 days paternity, but 8 weeks of maternity, of paid parental leave. Do you require employees to use or exhaust other PTO accruals prior to using parental leave? And 11% of those respondents said yes, that they do have to exhaust any of the balances that they have in the bank, which I think is a fair thing to do for sure. What percentage of the employee's normal pay rate do you compensate during the parental leave? And this when I was like, wow, this is an unbelievable benefit. So 92% of those who offer are paying 76 to 100% of the salary. But so that is very generous, really, really generous. I think that's great. I think that would be awesome if you get that while you're off. Please indicate if you provide parental leave for the following new parents. And this was one of the big questions that we got during, who qualifies for this? So obviously birth mother, biological father came in a very close second, adoptive parents, domestic partners, foster parents, individual acting in loco parentis. So that could potentially be grandparents, step parents. We do have grandparents listed, and we're not sure what the other category is. We want to know what this other category is. Obviously, we had very few responded, but we really weren't sure what that was. So, all right, next slide. Please indicate when the paid parental leave commences. So it commences on delivery date for most people. Others, when short-term disability expires. Other, due date 2 weeks before and 1 week after. We did not have anybody respond in those categories. When does an employee become eligible to use paid parental leave? And as you can see, 50% say that they have to be there at least a year before this benefit kicks in, which I think makes sense. We had somebody in the audience, actually it was Greenleaf Trust, and they're looking at changing their policy because right now it is a year, but they hired somebody recently who became pregnant. I don't know, was it right after she got hired or something? And so they're actually looking to do it upon date of hire instead of the 12-month wait. How much time do employees have to take paid parental leave? And so this was unbelievable within the first 2 years of parenthood. So that was very generous. Oh, sorry, within 6 months was the most popular one. That was my mistake. Within 6 months of parenthood, they have to take it. 37% was within the first year of parenthood. There we go. We also asked how many people offer short-term disability. We have clients that have it on a volunteer basis, or we have it as a group paid. So let's see. 75% of you offer short-term disability, and only 25% is no, which is fantastic. Our short-term disability benefits employer paid and are employee paid or both. So the majority was employer paid, where the employer is picking up the entire cost of the premium. And then we have 24% that was a volunteer employee. And then we just have a few that share cost, the short-term disability. And that is our entire presentation. And we would love to open this up for any type of conversation. I was just actually, if you have a question, I think the easiest way, Adam, if I'm correct, is if we can have people raise their hand. Is that the easiest way to do it if they have specific questions?
Yep, that would work great.
Okay. So if you have any specific questions on this leave, or if you want to share anything that you might, that's something different that you're using to attract and retain employees, that would be awesome if anybody would like to share it, their ideas. Anybody? Everybody's being very quiet today.
Quiet.
I know. Somebody have a cool idea they want to share? Doesn't look like it. Well, I will tell you. Did somebody say something? Did I miss that? So I'll share, we just asked people in the room, what are they doing that's different, to really attract employees. And there was one organization in the room, and they offered a sign bonus for referrals, a referral bonus program. And 42% of their new hires came from internal referrals. And they said it was working fantastic. And there was a couple other organizations that were doing that as well. And so it did vary by when they got paid out that bonus. I think the majority was like after 6 months. If the person stayed 6 months, then the referral person and the new employee each got a bonus. So that seemed to be a great topic of conversation. Like Carrie had mentioned, people were reevaluating their total comp structure, looking at different benefits, etc. So, well, I do not see anything in the chat or the hands up, but I don't know if I see the hands up. Adam, I think that's probably more you.
I'm not seeing any hands up.
Okay.
Well, in the chat.
We just gave you 15 minutes of your life back. So that is awesome. Everybody enjoy the upcoming holiday. Have a safe and fun time with your family. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.